Amen, amen. So we are still in our Anomaly series. And what we talked about last week, we're in Matthew chapter 5, and we were on the other side of the Beatitudes where Christ is exclaiming to the disciples now that you are salt and light, right? He's given them these indicators of, and here's what I love about Christ, and we talked about this last week, is that there is a sense to where Jesus calls us something that we probably don't have an idea that we are yet. So he didn't say that you should be becoming salt and light. He said you are salt and light. He says you are the salt of the earth, and he goes through that whole piece in verse 13. But when he talks about you the salt of the earth, it gives us something to measure up to, right? Like if you ever tell your kid, right, you say, hey, whatever your name is, kiddo, you're great, you're smart. And they haven't gone to any school yet, but they're a baby. You're talking about they're great, you're smart. Because what it does is it gives them something to have aspirationally that they look at. I remember when my 21-year-old, well, will be 21 in a few weeks, in a week or so, Daniel, on the 27th. But when he was younger, one of our close friends said to him, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. And he was itty bitty. He's like, well, why are you proud of me? I haven't done anything to be proud of yet. But here's the thing, when Christ calls us salt of the earth, there is something that we are now trying to emulate and trying to get to, even though we're not there yet. He's saying to us what we ought to be in our position in our life as believers and kingdom citizens. But last week we talked about the fact, and we're not gonna stay on the salt piece too much, but last week we talked about the fact that our goal, our aim, and our mission is to be salt of the earth, but not salty, right? We talked about that we want to be salt of the earth and have the preserving factors, have all the other factors that salt has, but not to be salty. And even though, here's the dichotomy there, is that when we talk about salty, salt is salty, it by nature of what it is. But when we talk about salty, when we were referring to it, we're talking about the cultural understanding of when you say somebody being salty. If they're being hateful, petty, jealous. So we said we should be salt, but not salty. And a lot of times for those of us who call ourselves Christians, we have said that we are being salt, but in actuality, when we look at our civic landscape, we have been salty versus being salt. So today we want to jump into something in the part 2 of that as we're continuing talking about the split of what kingdom looks like versus what we're seeing. We're now jumping away from being salt of the earth to light of the world. So Christ says that you and I, and let's read it real quickly, verses 14 through 16, so you don't think we're not reading the Bible. We'll just go back to verse 13. We'll jump all the way ahead. He says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. Verse 14, 15, and 16 says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor, watch this, not should not be hidden, but cannot be hidden. We'll talk about that in a moment. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. So when we're talking about, as we're continuing to differentiate what it looks like to be kingdom, last week we talked about the idea that we are supposed to be better to make things better. How salt, it makes things better, but then too much salt makes it really nastifies it up. Too much salt. So we talked about how in culture, oftentimes those believers who said they're being salt of the earth, they're actually, when they're salty, they put too much salt. And when you know something has too much salt, it's nasty, it's bitter, it's just a taste that you don't want to have anything to do with. So when we're talking about differentiating ourselves and what that's supposed to look like, we're talking about now here, this light, being the light of the world. And what's been kind of striking me this past week, as I've been kind of preparing and kind of mulling over and praying and meditating on today, has been how light has its home, is at least in this instance of light, in hope. And we talked about a while ago when we talked about the defiance of hope. But here we talk about light in terms of hope. It really makes me think about And we referenced this the implications of it in the laughter conversation we just had. And when we're talking about hope, there's an idea that when we are looking at our world as it is, that there is hopelessness happening. And the idea about light, and we'll talk about this a little bit in a moment, is light is supposed to give hope. Light is supposed to give something else out there that you and I don't currently see in our current situation. And we'll talk about this in Christ saying that we're the light of the world, what that means. Again, we're being called something. Here it is. Have you ever applied for a job before? Of course you have. You're all employed. So but when you apply for a job and you look at the application or you look at the requirements, it gives you, hey, this is what marketing or engineering or human resources, whatever the job is, the title, under it has a job description. Then it has under that responsibilities. Like what you'll do on a daily basis is ... And all that is based on the title that you've been given. So what Christ is giving us to the disciples and to us thousands of years later is, if you are a Christian, if you are a kingdom citizen, if you dare call yourself by that name, if that's the moniker that you go by, if you go to church and you like bragging about being a Christian, this is the Christian nation or whatever the things are we like to say, if Christian's going to be in your bio, like have you ever gone to someone's bio on Instagram? And in their bio, it'll be like, God first, Christian, yada, yada. And then it'll be stuff in their post that have very little to do or support what they say in their bio. Either they're talking about something crazy, hateful rhetoric, racism even, or there's some thirst traps. You know what a thirst trap is? You ever heard that word before? So you may have somebody on there who is doing some things they ought not be doing, trying to elicit a response that you don't need to get, but Christian is the first line. If I'm going to add Christian, but I'm going to have a post that says otherwise, I might want to have that as the last thing in my list, right? I might want to have dancer, yada, yada, and then per Christian, because I don't need my first thing to be. I'm just saying, so all these things. What I'm saying is, Christ says, if I'm a Christian, I have some responsibilities that come along with being Christian. So he says, if you're saying Christian, then your first duty is salt of the earth, light of the world. Now, mind you, we talked about a few weeks ago, the Beatitudes. This comes on the other end of the Beatitudes where Christ is saying, bless this, bless that, bless this, bless that. And now we're saying what you've learned about meek and persecuted for righteousness' sake, all the things the Beatitude gives us, all these standards and positions. Christ says, now these are things that you and I have to be living out. And how do you live them out? By being the salt of the earth and light of the world. And here's the deal. He says, you are, in no unwavering terms, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Now, if your age is older, where you can remember 80s politics, several politicians have used the city on the hill analogy to refer to our country. Y'all can research that out. Ronald Reagan, rest in peace. That was his deal. City on a hill, right? Now, here's what I'm saying. We've said city on a hill, and I'm going to let us know why we have said it, but it hasn't really panned out for us. Now, mind you, Christ says, y'all remember last week when we talked about the salt of the earth, I said there's a differentiation, watch the switch, when we talk about the salt of the earth, light of the world. So about being salt of the earth, remember the curse or the judgment that Christ gave to those who were not being salt properly was that they'd be trampled under men's feet. And the whole idea about, remember, what do we say was the way you preserved the meat with the salt? You didn't just, you put it on there and you rubbed it into it. So there's a rubbing in that helps to preserve, helps to do the things that salt ought to do. So when we're talking about the earth, there's a absorption process that salt has to have in the earth as similar to in the meat that makes it preserve. And I'm saying all that just so I can get to the switch of earth and world. So he says, I'm the salt of the earth, but now I'm the light of the world. So what I'm saying, light of the world, the Greek word for that is cosmos, K-O-S-M-O-S, where you and I get cosmos from. And the word cosmos means arrangement or order, or even more so decorations. So it speaks to culture. It speaks to the world, not the sphere of the globe itself, because it's not flat. It doesn't speak to that, but it does speak to the people, the cultures, the arrangements, the order. So what it says is, Jesus says, you and I as believers are the light, or are supposed to be the light to the culture, the light to the world, the light to the arrangement, the light to the decorations. That's what the light's supposed to go to. But here's the deal. It sounds great to say I'm the light of the world, but haven't you realized sometimes that as Christians, oftentimes what we're called to, the challenge of actually being what you and I are called to is tough, right? We think just by default of being a Christian, it's going to make it easy to be the light of the world. And because we have a misunderstanding of what it means to be the light of the world, we do it all wrong. We mess it up. So here's the deal. Light of the world, city set on a hill, which cannot be hidden. We're going to deal with the city. We're going to deal with verse 14, 15, 16. We're going to get out of here. So we're looking here. When I'm looking through all this in light and how it works with hope and all these different things, it makes me think about a song that came out back in 2006. Have you guys ever heard of an artist called India Ari? Heard the name before? I see a hand in the back waving as it walks out the door. India Ari, there's a song that she sang back in 2006. A lot of people know her by one of her most famous songs, I'm Not My Hair. That's a song she had back in the day. But there's a song in 2006 that she wrote and sang that said, there's hope. You never heard that song before? It's called There's Hope. And the chorus said, there's hope. Doesn't take a thing to laugh. It talked about smiling, laughing, all different things. But then the verses talk about all the wildness happening in the world that she inhabited in 2006. Not too dissimilar to all the wildness that we have happening in 2025. But as she's talking about all the stuff that the world has going on, she keeps interjecting in that song with each chorus. The verse is talking about the wildness, but she interjects it. Each chorus says, there's hope. It doesn't take a thing to laugh. Doesn't take a thing to smile. All these different things. And then she goes back to the verse that talks about how bad the world is or how crazy life can be. But then she comes back again and interjects, there's hope. So the Bible gives us that same that same songwriting structure today when Christ says, you are the light of the world. Which means, in one instance, that you and I are supposed to be the hope. That we can see all the stuff that's happening on the news, all the stuff happening around the world, all the stuff happening at our jobs or with people that we know, and you and I are supposed to be, like we said last week, there's something that's supposed to be about you and I showing up in a place that makes it better. Because we are better. Not better in terms of I'm better than you, not like that at all, not a hierarchy in that regard, but because I am a better person compared to my old me since I've met Jesus, that when I come around, because of the salt and the light that's in me and that I am supposed to make the situation better. So if Christians, and here's where we get off, and we talked about this a moment ago, here's where we get off, here's the challenge of talking about Christian nation, because as a Christian nation, let's just say that that's what we are. No. I know that. You know. This is for the example.
We're taking a trip.
Yeah, multiverse. So say we are a Christian nation, right? Y'all already know what I feel about that. I've said it before, and why we're not and why we're not. So say we're a Christian nation. Say that as our moniker, right? Our bio says Christian nation, right? Hence Instagram, right? Christian nation. You know, what our posts ought to be are things that substantiate our bio line, our bio. Christian nation, my posts ought to be showing things that are salt and light. So when I say things like Christian nation, if I'm light of the world, it means that I'm supposed to be, that my presence here is supposed to be making things better, right? Not a Christian individual, but a whole nation of Christians, right? A whole nation of Christ followers, right? Because nations can be Christian, right? I guess. But there ought to be a betterment to the world. And not, hear this, not even a betterment just to the world outside of here, but for the nation, there ought to be a betterment for the inhabitants of the nation that's saying it's Christian. Because the whole thing about salt and light is that it makes things better. So let's back off. If we look at what light's supposed to do and salt's supposed to do, it really messes up our byline about being a Christian nation. So the same thing, the same thing someone who proclaims Christian nation would say as a deterrent to someone who said Christian in their bio, but was stripping, we need to say the same thing to the person that's Christian nation in their bio, or the country that says Christian nation in their bio, but their posts are dark. Now here's what I'm saying. Christ said, you are light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Why was it important that this whole hill or city on a hill be so important to what Christ is talking about? Here's what I'm saying. Christ is talking to, we talked about this before, we talked about this in Bible study even here, that when Christ is talking or Paul is talking, whoever's writing, their audience gets exactly what they're saying. When Christ is talking to the disciples saying, you are light of the world, a city on a hill that cannot be hidden, they're like, oh, okay, it registers. Why does it register? I have in my house, or even in here, even in your house, you go into your house, you can flip a light switch. And what happens? If you paid your electric bill, the lights come on. Or if your light bulbs are still good, lights come on. And some of you go to your house and say, hey, Alexa, lights on. Or hey, Google, hey, Siri, whoever your digital assistant is that's looking to kill you, because I'm convinced that they're coming for us. I'm convinced, because common conspiracy theorists, but I'm convinced it's coming for us. But so I tell my kids when Daniel and Miles, Daniel, I know, right? Escape room. Thank you, ladies. Yeah. Ladies, the women keep saving our lives. Yeah, I got it. Listen, I'm on Will Smith's side in iRobot. I'm just saying, if y'all seen iRobot, you know, I believe it. I believe it. 3 laws, my butt. But any rate, you guys see the movie to know. So talking about the light of the world. So we flip on switches and lights come on. But when Christ is talking to the disciples, they understood that, hey, we are a lantern and bonfire type of people. Oil lamps and bonfires, which didn't stay on all night, right? So if you were ever at this place in this time with these people, were no light switches, no smart lights, not even everybody who was out at night had a lantern. So what am I saying? When the lanterns were out, when the bonfires were done, the darkness was so crazy. Like if you like to frequent caves, I don't know if you love caves. Yeah, I'm just saying. I mean, neither. You can't see your hand, darkness. That's what you had because there were no lights anywhere. That you couldn't be like, hey, Thaddeus, turn the light on. I'm picking on names. Hey, Jehoshaphat, can you talk to Siri? It wasn't happening. What I'm saying is the darkness that was there when Christ was saying light of the world, they understood the darkness, and he says the city on a hill that cannot be hidden. So they understood the darkness that it got, and so do we in 2025 understand the darkness that we see right now. There is a darkness that seems to get darker by the day. That seems to get darker by the minute. Whether it's an AI video of a fighter jet flying over protest, dropping feces. If you've seen it, you've seen it. It seems to get darker by the day, whether it's failed rapture predictions, whether it's whatever, all the different things that we see, kids being zip tied, whatever it is you pick, there's darkness that seems to happen more and more every day. And it's not just the political or civic darkness, but even just sin in general. It's a dark, dark time. And so Christ is juxtaposed in the darkness, but he says, you are the light of the world, a city in the hill that cannot be hidden. So basically what he's saying, that when the lanterns go out, when the bonfires go out, it's pitch black, it's dark, but because you're the light of the world, you are a city on a hill that cannot be hidden. Why is that important? Because back in this time when they were these fortresses or cities on top of hills, they were made from a white limestone that even when it was dark, when that moon hit it, you could see it far off. Didn't have to be lights going on. The city was made out of, what the walls were constructed out of, made the light refract, and you could see it from far off, even though all the light was around. So Christ, when talking to the disciples, understood, hey, believers, Christians, you who sit, me who stands, we all have the responsibility of, as believers, our default is to be able to be seen and perceived even when it's dark out. So how do you tell when the dark times are as they are dark as they are right now, who it is that's following Christ? Who it is that's supposed to bring light? Because it seems like in some instances that the Christians oftentimes are making it darker versus bringing the light. We got a switch in our house. Yeah, we got a switch. I don't know, but a switch, a light switch. Light switch. No. We do have that too. Miles has one, but the Joy-Con is broken. But so, and I'm not replacing it. It's $80 for it. I'm like, can you just give me like a used whatever? So at any rate, light switch, and when you go, typically when you up, on, down, off. But this switch, when you go down, it turns on, up, it goes off. Here it is. Maybe you might. I might have to do that. So, but it go. What? I'll give my Bob the Builder. You are correct. They probably didn't install it. Crazy. I need to do that. So, but what it does in our own current vernacular, current worldview is many times because we have now switched the light switch around in that we are doing things that we think are bringing light, but that are not. As believers. Not indicting or speaking to you all, us who are in here, but just as a large scale, back to the Christian nation thing, as a large scale, we are not bringing light the way light is supposed to be brought. Like the city on the hill that cannot be hidden, the idea that Christ is saying is when you are far off, when you're in darkness, like, okay, here's the deal. Like when you're going through it, when stuff is hard, do you have a go-to person? There's somebody you can think of in your head when you're going through, when stuff is crazy. Okay, I'm gonna call X, Y, and Z. This is my go-to person that I know is going to hold me down, that I know will encourage me, or just allow me to cry, or vent and yell, and they'll just be there, or they'll pray, or whatever the need is for the moment. That's my go-to where I'm gonna go because I know they're gonna give me what I need in the moment. What the indictment is for you and I in the 21st century is that when all these things are happening, we are not in mass. Now, individually, you and I might be, but we are not in mass giving people somewhere to run to. Why? It's so crazy because right now, when as dark as the world is, as dark as times are, it ought to be those that are Christians that people can see and say, I'm going to run there. But oftentimes we are the ones that they are running from. So how can I be the one you're running from at the same time being the one you run to? That is our issue. Because people are running from Christians, from those who are supposed to be light bearers. But Christ is saying that folk are supposed to be running to us. Here's the deal. So he says, you're the light of the world, seated on the hill that cannot be hidden. So there's an idea of where we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to be. But we got this thing where Christ is trying to get us to identify with the light, but also with the positioning. Watch this. Let's go to verse 15. He says, you're a city on a hill that can't be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. I was on Instagram the other day, and there was this video that they posted about how to, like if you go in a blackout, what you do to light the house. Now, growing up, we would always, mom would always keep, or grandma would always keep votive candles when blackout happened, the little small candle, or even the big ones, because you can get those for real cheap, for like 1 million of them, you can real cheap. Or you had a flashlight. You always have a flashlight, ever-ready flashlight. I'm aging myself. Or the kind with the 9-volt, was it the 9-volt? What's the big battery? No, the big square was like in the camping flashlights. Okay, so get those. We had those. But the video that I watched, the guy had a gallon of water, and he put the flashlight on top of it. Yeah. I'm like, oh, we didn't have that. Wasn't nobody doing Instagram when I was a kid. We didn't have Instagram, but that would have been crazy to see. What am I saying? The light from this Instagram video that was the gallon bottle was used for did way more illumination than the light in my little flashlight, or the light in our little votive candles, the light in the stick candles, the little Advent church service candles, the little long white ones. The light from the Instagram video from this did so much more. Then the guy in the video, he did that. He said, yeah, then position it in your house to the place where it's going to give the most optimal light. I'm like, oh, okay. Because here's the thing. When Christ says, what did he say in verse 15? He says, nor do people, said your city on the hill can't be hidden, but nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. Because here's the deal. He says, when the disciples were hearing what Christ was talking about, the idea was, it's dark in this house. It's dark in here. And most people didn't have like the multiplicity of lanterns floating around. A lantern for every room. First of all, it wasn't no bunch of down the hall, third door to the right. That's not how houses work. So, but if I have a lamp, this lantern that I'm lighting, and I put it in the corner, that may not be the most optimum spot. So the Bible here says, when Christ is talking, he says, they don't just get a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to the house. Because the idea was when they were doing his lamp, they would position it just right, put it on the stand, and wherever it needed to be in the house, put it in a place where everyone could receive equal amounts as best as possible of light to the corners of the house. Like they didn't have it in the corner, like covering it like this with a bushel and with their bodies covering it and letting everybody else see darkness. But the idea was Christ was saying that if you got this, you put it somewhere that's optimum for everyone to be a beneficiary of the light that you have, right? So what Christ is giving to us and the disciples was, as Christians, how are you and I positioned in the world? What's our positioning? Now, here's the deal. We talked about this a few weeks ago. I don't have an issue with Christians who are political. But the issue is with political Christians. What am I saying? That for a Christian, you can be in a place of politics or a place of civics, and that's a position where your light shines, if you understand first what the light's supposed to be. But for many of us, we are ill-positioned, or if we are positioned, we're doing things that are not allowing people to properly get the light that Christ has for us to get or to show. So he says, if you're lit up and you're under a bushel, who's getting the benefit of that? If I'm saying I'm a Christian and I'm in the world and I'm supposed to be a light, refracting light and showing light to the world, showing hope to the world, and I put it up under a bushel, who benefits from that? Here's what I'm asking, or better yet stating for us, many times when we are light-bearing Christians, we don't want really people to get, we don't really care that people get the light. You know what I'm saying? For us, more often than not, the light that we're supposed to bear, we are content with being bushel Christians, with having a light, but covering it so people don't get the benefit. What do it say? They position on a stand so everybody can get the light. What am I saying? It looks like in our current scenario, in this multiverse of madness that we're living in, thank you, Dr. Stephen Strange, it looks like us taking away health care, but at the same time, bailing out a country of 40 billion. It looks like veterans having their care and their honor taken from them, but yet we have ballrooms being built, and yet we have all these things happening from the people who are saying we are a Christian nation. What am I saying? It's okay for some to get the light, but not all to get the light, right? So it says that I can, so this is going to be for me and my friends right here to get the light. We're just shooting light amongst each other. Pew, 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 pew. But everyone else is in the dark. But Christ says that the light's supposed to be properly positioned so everybody can see it. So everyone can get it. So everyone can see the good work and glorify your Father in heaven. So he goes in. They don't put it under this basket, but on a stand. So how are we positioned? Even as Christians, because here's what light does. Light illuminates, it exposes, and it guides. So we ask ourselves, as Christians, what are we illuminating? Sometimes the light can be in terms of exposing the darkness of sin. It could be illuminating and bringing hope to dark situations. And it could be guiding us to somewhere to go. Light does all these different things, right? It does all these things. Like if I have a cut, like it's funny, we have one thing we'll do, like if a kid came in with a cut from outside, the first thing we do is take them to the place in the house with the most light. So Rachel says, yes, I got the mommy, yes. So you would go, so I can look and see, because in a dim, like they come to us, if I remember when Miles, he got himself injured really bad, and he came and bought it and crying. This is a long time ago in the downstairs room, and it's not a lot of light there. Trees block it, the window. So I'm like, I can't really see. I can see that it's bleeding, that's messed up. So I took him up to the bathroom where there's a lot better lighting, and we're able to see the stuff. So what I'm saying is, light has an exposition quality where it exposes, but doesn't just expose for the sake of exposing, but exposes for the sake of, this is what the malady is, how do we fix it? So I'm pouring peroxide on, I'm doing betadine or whatever it is, the little brown stuff to cleanse it. I'm doing everything but the kitchen sink, and I'm wrapping it, gauzing and bandaging it. We got butterfly stitches, all these different things. So what I'm saying to us is, as a country, as a culture, as Christians in this Christian nation, right? The hypothetical air quote Christian nation, we love to expose people's sin and just to expose it. But the idea is never to expose it for them to get better. I want to show what these people are doing just so I could have a campaign that pushes you to hate them. I want to show you how they're missing the mark just so I could have a case against them in the media and form a narrative, but never to help them. But the idea should be, if light is exposing, it ought to be exposing for us to properly go in and see what's wrong to make it right. So light exposes it, but it also illuminates, which means that in a dark spot, light's going to bring hope. In a dark spot, light's going to show something that we've not seen so far. So as Christians in this particular area that we're in 2025, as light bearers, you and I being these refractors of light that comes from Jesus, was it John 9:5? Luke 9:15, where Christ says, I'm light of the world. And we are light bearers, so we're pew, 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 we're refracting the light that Christ gives, reflecting the light. So as those people, you and I should be illuminating dark spaces. But like I said a few moments ago, oftentimes the Christians, we're the ones making it worse and making it darker. So we find ourselves fighting ourselves to really be the light that Christ is causing us and wanting us to be. So the question for you and I is, what are we doing to properly illuminate? Now, we're past exposing. We're talking about illumination now. How are we properly illuminating the dark spaces? Is our commentary, are our prayers, are our words bringing more light, revelation, and clarity, or are we just making it more dark, making it more dank, making it more foggy, making it more unintelligible? What are we doing by us being there? Have you ever been going through something and having a tough time, and you got somebody comes around in your friend circle, and they come, everybody else is kind of encouraging you, praying with you, crying with you if you need to cry, all that kind of different stuff, but then somebody's like the Eeyore in the bunch, right? It's like, okay, you need to go. You need to go, because at this moment, if you're reading the room properly, you're not bringing light to where light is needed. And so as Christians, I want us to be people, even if we're in the minority, we talked about this a few weeks ago, sometimes it's the minority of people who are trying to properly act as believers and bring light to where it's darkness. So when you and I go to work, either in person or virtually, because sometimes virtually, I mean, you can bring light via Slack. You can do, I've done it. You can bring light via Slack. You can do that. You can bring light old school in the water cooler, in the lunchroom, whatever. What I'm asking us is, when we are on our work grind throughout the week, are we bringing light? When we are in our conversations, our group chats, when we are at the game, or wherever you and I find ourselves, is light accompanying us, or are we bringing this darkness and dankness and this, woe is me and this depression to the party? Not saying we can't ever be sad. Not saying we can't ever be depressed. But I'm saying that Christ is saying positioning us as light, and light has an illuminating factor. And listen, we are in a dark world right now. What are we bringing to the party that allows folk to think, hey, something's on the other side of this? I know it seems crazy. I know it seems really fascist right now. I know it seems really totalitarian right now. I know it seems like these things are happening right now. But where can we bring light? That's what our sister India Irie was talking about. She said, there's hope. So 2 things about hope, and we'll get out of here. Hope has a remnant quality, but then it has a there she is quality. What do I mean? Hope has a remnant quality, which means there's hope is often the last thing that's remaining when everything else has gone away. And hope is not this aimless thing that we just kind of throw out into the ether. But hope is a confident expectation, a confident anchoring in the Lord. That's what the hope is. So, but hope sometimes is the last thing that we grasp onto. So when she's singing that song, the idea about hope is that hope, it remains. Hope is a remnant. After friends go, after all the other stuff goes, the hope oftentimes is the last thing that you're able to hold on to. And so the Bible talks about all these things about hope in the Old Testament, in the New Testament. I believe Paul said that hope maketh not ashamed. So all these things where hope is something like, the Bible says we hope against hope. So sometimes our hope has to fight against the things that we see that seem to be so real, so evident, so tangible. So hope is a remnant, but also hope has a guiding thing. What do we say about the city on the hill? Remember, it can't be hidden. Limestone that reflects the light even in the darkness. Where if I'm traveling in the dark, the way I know to go somewhere and where we're supposed to be going is I can say, hey, there's the city. It's all lit up. There is a light when you travel in the South. A light, like we've done this in the daytime, but it doesn't work in the daytime. But at night, it works in a different kind of way. People are always excited for this, but at night it works better. You're like, what are you talking about? When you travel, especially when we go to Florida, we go to Carolina, it works too. For driving back from there at night, the brightest billboard we see. First, when you drive in the South, you see all the billboards that say repent or you're going to hell. Those are prevalent when you're driving. Have you seen the right? You're driving. It's try Jesus, repent or you're going to hell. You'll see the sparsely the interspersed Confederate flag, depending on where you're driving through, and then you'll see the signs about all the. It's like Jesus in adult stores. Y'all, if you drive down south, it's adult stores and Jesus. It is, huh? And clowns and boiled peanuts. It's 3. But then there's one sign at night. At night it makes all. It's like glory to God. At night it makes so much sense. There's these billboards that light up brighter than any other billboard. It's yellow and red, but it'll say, Buc-ee's, however many miles away. It could say 100 miles away, and if the kids see it at night, jumping up across I-75, that it may be an hour, 2 hours away, but it gives them hope that that thing is coming. Buc-ee's is coming. And if you watch this afterwards and you're like, I don't live in the South, I don't know about Buc-ee's, listen, go online, look it up, go on YouTube. So, and then when you get to Buc-ee's, you can see the Buc-ee's when you're in the vicinity because it's so well lit. The lights, it's almost like driving up to Las Vegas, to the Strip. The lights just emanate from where, and it's always darkness all around. I'm telling you, because Buc-ee's is not, it's not like I'm going through downtown and Buc-ee's in downtown Atlanta. Buc-ee's is always in the middle of these dark areas, so dark, so pitch black, but then Buc-ee's is like, bing. Because there's this beacon that Buc-ee's is for my candied almonds, for my clean bathrooms, for good salaries if you need a job. Because Buc-ee's pays really well. I'm just saying. Y'all ever seen them? Okay, just side thing, rabbit trail. Okay, what I'm saying to us is that there is a idea of hope that works much like a lighthouse. You don't think about a lighthouse when the seas are calm. You don't think about a lighthouse when it's daytime and the seas are, but when you are topsy-turvy in the middle of the night, and if you've ever been on a cruise before, I have not, but if you've ever been on one before, I've seen it just from YouTube, how it looks, or watching Love Boat, but at night in the middle of the ocean, I don't know about you, but there are no street lights in the ocean. Yeah, so very little lighthouses, no street lights, but there's no lights. It's pitch black, right? So, but when you deal with a lighthouse, though, if you're in the vicinity of a lighthouse, a working one, you can still find a working lighthouse. When lighthouses were a thing, when they were in vogue and people were using lighthouses, they would not just be lights. You would see the light going and you have a lighthouse worker. Watch this. For one, they were tall, like that city on the hill that can't be hidden. They had a positioning issue where you were tall and you have a light. They weren't automated. You had one person in there, or maybe a team working the lighthouse, turning it around, whatever it was, keeping the wicks, whatever. There was a team that were in the lighthouse. And fishermen would see the lighthouse, and it would matter to them when the storms and the water was topsy-turvy, they're almost capsized, they're worried. The lighthouse let them know where they were in proximity to land and safety. So as believers in the 21st century, are we positioned high enough to properly give hope and light to those who are looking for refuge and anchor? And so my concern is in the 21st century, when I'm looking at those who are saying, I'm a Christian, because it's trendy and it sounds good, is that no one is getting hope in the darkness. No one is giving light and giving anchor because, one, we're not positioned right. And if we are positioned right, our bulbs are dim or dead. Because the thing about light bulbs, especially or like old school with when they did lighthouses, those lights had to be maintained. That whole system had to be maintained. So there is one instance where we are not properly maintaining our lights, but at the same time, many of us are dead lighthouses. Here's what I'm saying. Like when I'm on Instagram, I look at weird stuff, Facebook and Instagram, whether it's barber videos, landscaping videos, but sometimes I look at videos like there'll be architecture or home design videos, and they'll be like showing videos of like a remade lighthouse that was made to somebody's home. They live with this lighthouse. So it's really pretty, and they live here in this lighthouse, or it's this monument or whatever, but it don't work. But it looks good. And so my concern for us in this time is that we have these lighthouses, or it's supposed to be light to the world, but we look good, but we're not functional. And lighthouses, to properly give light and hope and provide hope for the people that are coming around, has to be something that's functional. Okay, last verse and we're done. We'll get y'all out of here. Verse 16. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and glory to your Father in heaven. So we talk about this particular verse. He says, let my light shine. So there's almost in a weird way a permission structure for the light. Because sometimes you be like, you can't dim the light of the Lord in you. People do it all the time. Paul said like this, don't quench the spirit. People dim the light all the time. Haven't you done that before? I'm a Christian, I love the Lord. You get around certain people. I know they don't roll with that. And so I start talking like I don't really talk. I might throw a few cuss words in. I might laugh at a few distasteful jokes, even though I wouldn't do that any other times. I got this kind of sanctified Holy Ghost code switching. Then I get to church, it's like, holy, 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 Lord God Almighty. But then when we get out of there, we're saying something else. That is the dimming of the light. So there's a permission structure that the light is needed. So Christ says, you are supposed to be the light. But then what we're doing around, oftentimes we're covering it under the bucket, putting it under the bushel, so people don't see the light. So here's the deal. He says, I said, my same way, let the light shine. So there's a permission structure so that others may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So here's the deal. The light that we are, the light that we reflect, the light that comes through us. This actually could be a bigger conversation. We ain't got time for that though. It's not just, so here's the deal. He says, out of just the overflow of who you are as a believer, good works don't just include feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, though those are great good works. Like, there are two kids that we've adopted in Africa, Kobale Soma and Ofinor. I don't want to butcher the name, so I'm gonna leave it alone right now. I'll butcher the name or something. Like, that's not their name. I'm gonna butcher it. And so, but so there is a sense to where you do that, and that's part of the good works, right? But these good works refer also, if you look at the Greek wording of this, it's not just good works like him giving someone food, like Christine talked about earlier, or doing this and that tangibly, but it talks about justice and mercy and kindness. All these things are lights, right? You ever been somebody or have done this to you by somebody? If you've worked in a restaurant, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but if you've been served by someone in a restaurant, left a note on the receipt with that amazing tip, because you kind of sensed the waiter or waitress were having a bad day, a rough day, but they went above and beyond to really be a blessing to your table, and you gave them a tip and left a sweet note on there. That is a good work. How you treated them and I remember, you may have not done this so much now, but growing up we did this. We're almost done, y'all. I'm gonna just close this up so I can be done soon. We used to do, after church, back in the day, we used to go to the smorgasbord. I'm aging myself. You're like, what is a smorgasbord? You ever heard that word before? Like before a Golden Corral, you go to smorgasbord, right? Smorgasbord, buffet, smorgasbord. Smorgasbord sounds more refined than buffet, but whatever, same thing. After church, we would go to the smorgasbord, one around the corner from my grandma's house. And you go in there, and this was not just in the one we went to, but all around. People would often say, not just smorgasbord, restaurants in general, because people like to go out to eat after church. They do that. So we do that every once in a while. Here, we'll go out, whatever. And people often say, like when crowds come in after church, people would often say, servers or restaurant managers will say, man, the most rude people, the meanest and nastiest people I come into contact with the crowd and the church after church rush. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Because I just stopped singing at church, doing worship and working with kids and preaching to whatever we do on Sunday mornings. Then I got to the restaurant and I was rude to the server. I was demanding. I was short patience. I gave like $1 tip when the bill was $150. I mean, all these things. And it's like, because we divorced what light's supposed to be. And then say that I run into that person, that server later in the parking lot or somewhere else, divorced from that particular eating scenario, and I'm trying to witness to them about Christ. I don't want to hear about Jesus from you. You remember how you treated me last week at the restaurant, at the smorgasbord after church with you and your little deacon friends and your little friends from church? Because the light that we show, the light that emanates from us at the source of Christ ought to be something that allows people to see and point to something else. And many times the light that we show is for our own aggrandizement, for our own looking great, for our own photo op, for our own so I could do this and say that I did a Christian thing. But it ought to be something that points to Jesus so people can see how I am living, see how I'm treating you, and say, why are you, have you ever had anybody ask you, why are you so nice? Or why are you so this? Why are you so that? How do you have so much hope? How are you this? How are you that? What I'm saying to you is when people would do that, or even in the small things we don't really pay attention to, people are looking and seeing, they're pointers, they're guideposts. So what my question is when we show the light of Christ, what is it pointing them to? What are they being directed to when they see your light? I could tell you in our current scenario, folk who claim to be Christians, what they're being pointed to hate, to nationalism, to racism, to apathy, to unkindness, to unholiness, to lack of integrity, to no character, but all under the guise of saying, I am a Christian and I'm a light bearer. Pow, 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 pow. I'm got light and I'm shining, but I'm pointing you to something else. So when you look at what I'm doing, you'll point to some other kind of distorted Christ versus the Christ of the scriptures. So what I'm saying to you and I today is that we be light bearers, that when people see us, they're pointed to something else. That we are great signposts. That when they see you, Rachel, when they see you, Jason, they're being pointed to something other than them. That is, Mary had this song, and I'm done. Mary had a song back in the day. I know who Mary is, right? And now that their names are Mary. But the group, Mary, it sounded good. But Erica and Tina were their names. But there was a song that they had called The God in Me. Of course you do. It's the God in me. Y'all are vibing across the room. It's a good song. I'm gonna start dancing. So. But the idea was the verse was saying all these things that you see in me, all these things that you notice, all these things you think are worthy, all these things you think are amazing. It's not me. It is the God in me. And so what Christ is giving us in Matthew 5, verses 14 through 16 is our cry and declaration needs to be, when folk ask you about it, it's the God in me. Because without God, you would have been, somebody would have been slapped, punched, cussed out. You would have been lost your mind. You'd have been frustrated, more anxious than you probably already are, given up, depressed, destitute, disillusioned, all that stuff. But God has helped you, has held you, has kept you. There's this song, old school song says, it says, it was nothing but the grace of God. It was nothing but the grace of God. Yeah. But at the end it says, he kept me, never left me. And so he talked about all this stuff that life threw my way, but it was God's grace that kept me and put me through that. So God says, be a pointer. Be a pointer to something. Because watch this. Here's this. It is hard out there right now, y'all. It is hard. It is rough. Probably for you in your own four walls, for sure. Whatever you have going on personally, yes, for sure. But it is rough in the world right now. It is super hard. It's discouraging. It's sad. It's maddening. People are dying. People are disappearing. People are not able to eat. People can't buy food. People can't pay bills. And what our job is in this moment, among all the other things we're called to do, is to point them to something else. Point them to something else, because everything else in the world is pointing them somewhere else. We need to join in that pointing thing too, but pointing them towards some hope, some peace, some joy, some love. So let's be that in the lives of the people we come into contact with. Amen? Amen. All right, we're done. Come on, let's give God some praise in this place. Come on.